Auschwitz-Birkenau, 1944. A trainload of Hungarian Jews arrives at the platform. Exhausted families stumble out into the harsh lights. SS guards shout orders. Dogs bark. And then he appears. Immaculately dressed in a pressed uniform, polished boots, white gloves, a slight smile on his face. He walks down the line of new arrivals whistling opera, casually pointing left or right with his riding crop. Left means immediate death in the gas chambers. Right means temporary survival, or something worse. The children notice him first. Some of the younger ones think he's handsome, kind even. He's particularly interested in twins. When he spots a pair, his eyes light up. He offers them candy, promises they'll be well fed, that they'll stay together. The mothers don't know whether to be grateful.
To understand the monster, we must first understand the man. Josef Mengele was born March 16, 1911 in Günzburg, Bavaria. His family was wealthy. They owned a farm equipment manufacturing company that still exists today. By all accounts, his childhood was unremarkable. Middle-class privilege, good education, no obvious signs of the evil to come. In 1930, Mengele entered the University of Munich to study medicine and anthropology. This is where the seeds were planted. His mentor was Ernst Rudin, one of the founders of the Nazi racial hygiene movement. His doctoral advisor was Ottmar von Verschuer, a leading eugenicist obsessed with twins and heredity. Mengele absorbed their teachings eagerly. He believed he was learning cutting-edge science. In reality, he was being indoctrinated into pseudoscientific racism. In 1935, the Nuremberg laws were enacted, stripping Jews of citizenship and basic rights. Mengele didn't protest, he celebrated. He joined the Nazi Party in 1937, the SS in 1938. He wasn't forced, he volunteered. In 1938, Mengele earned his second doctorate, this one in anthropology. His thesis focused on racial differences in jaw structures. The conclusion, predictably, Aryan features were superior. When World War II began, Mengele initially served as a medical officer with the Wehrmacht on the Eastern Front. He was wounded in action and decorated with the Iron Cross for bravery. Here's the disturbing part. By all military accounts, he was a good soldier. Competent, even heroic by conventional standards. Evil doesn't always announce itself with horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes it wears medals. After his injury made him unfit for combat, Mengele received a new assignment. May 30th, 1943, he arrived at Auschwitz-Birkenau as the camp physician. He was 32 years old. For him, Auschwitz wasn't a death camp, it was a laboratory. And he had an unlimited supply of human test subjects who, in Nazi ideology, weren't even considered human. The man who arrived at Auschwitz was educated, cultured, charming even. The man who would leave it was something else entirely.
Mengele's obsession was twins. He believed that by studying identical twins, he could unlock the genetic secrets of the master race, that he could find ways to increase Aryan birth rates and eliminate undesirable traits. His mentor, Ottmar von Verschuer, encouraged this research from Berlin. Some historians believe von Verschuer even received organs and blood samples that Mengele sent from Auschwitz. When transports arrived at Auschwitz, Mengele personally conducted selections, deciding who would live and who would die. But when he spotted twins, his demeanor changed entirely. Survivors remember him calling out, "Zwillinge heraus!" Twins, step forward. He was excited, almost giddy. Twins received special treatment at first. They weren't gassed immediately. They were housed in better barracks, given more food. Children didn't understand they'd been selected for something far worse than immediate death. Eva Moses Kor was 10 years old when she arrived at Auschwitz with her twin sister, Miriam. She later recalled, "Mengele looked like a movie star. He had a charisma. When he paid attention to us, we felt special. We didn't know we were his guinea pigs." The experiments began almost immediately. Some were merely measurements. Mengele meticulously recorded every physical detail: height, weight, eye color, hair texture, skull shape. He was building a database of racial characteristics. But then came the invasive procedures. Blood draws. So much blood that children would faint, sometimes drawn from both twins simultaneously to compare. Injections of unknown substances. Some twins received injections in their eyes. Mengele was trying to change eye color to blue. It caused excruciating pain, infections, blindness. X-rays, massive doses of radiation to see effects on growth and fertility. Surgical procedures without anesthesia. Mengele wanted to see how much pain the human body could endure. Some procedures were designed to see if twins felt pain simultaneously. He would torture one while observing the other's reaction. They did. They screamed for each other. He took notes. Mengele was particularly fascinated by a condition called noma, a gangrenous infection of the face. When he found children with this condition, he didn't treat it. He photographed its progression. When the child died, he would remove the head and send it to Berlin for study. Twin children weren't just research subjects. They were also comparison studies. If one twin got sick, Mengele would sometimes kill both, shooting them with phenol injections to the heart, so he could perform comparative autopsies. He wanted to see if their organs showed identical pathology. Vera Kriegel, who survived Mengele's experiments, later testified, "He had no empathy. We weren't children to him. We were specimens. He would pat our heads before an experiment, then cause us unimaginable pain, and his expression never changed." The exact number of twins Mengele experimented on is unknown. Estimates range from 1,500 to 3,000. Fewer than 200 survived. Most died during the experiments, from infections, from deliberate killings when Mengele wanted to perform autopsies, from the trauma their bodies endured. But twins weren't his only victims. Mengele also conducted experiments on people with dwarfism, on pregnant women, on anyone with unique physical characteristics he found interesting. He once tried to create conjoined twins by surgically connecting two Romani children back to back. They died within days from gangrene. He dissected people while they were still alive to study organ function. He castrated boys without anesthesia to study the effects. He forced sterilizations on women, sometimes removing organs to see if he could successfully transplant them. And through it all, he maintained his cultured facade. He would whistle Wagner while conducting experiments. He brought chocolate for children before injecting them with diseases. Survivors called him the White Angel, not because he was merciful, but because he appeared in his pristine white lab coat, bringing death disguised as medicine. Some survivors remembered him as polite, even gentle in manner. Others remembered him flying into sudden rages, beating prisoners to death for minor infractions. The truth is, Mengele was both, calm and sadistic, charming and monstrous, which somehow makes it worse. A raging beast you can understand, but a smiling monster conducting torture with scientific precision, that's the stuff of nightmares. And for the children of Auschwitz, it wasn't a nightmare they could wake up from.
January 17, 1945. Soviet troops are approaching Auschwitz. The Nazis begin evacuating the camp, destroying evidence of their crimes. Mengele gathered his research notes, his precious data collected from years of human experiments, and he fled. Unlike Hitler, Goering, or Himmler, Mengele survived the war. For the next 34 years, He would be one of the most wanted Nazi war criminals in the world. But he was never caught. Here's how he did it. Initially, Mengele hid in plain sight. Using his real name, he worked as a farmhand in Bavaria. The Allies were searching for major Nazi leaders. A random German doctor didn't raise red flags immediately. But by 1947, as the scope of Nazi medical experiments became clear through the Nuremberg doctors' trial, Mengele realized he was in danger. He obtained false papers under the name Helmut Gregor and began planning his escape. 1949, with help from the Nazi escape network, the so-called rat lines, Mengele fled to Argentina. Argentina, under President Juan Perón, was sympathetic to Nazi fugitives. Thousands found refuge there. Mengele didn't hide in poverty. His wealthy family sent money. He lived comfortably in Buenos Aires, even practicing medicine under his false identity. For years, he lived openly, attending German community events, dining at restaurants. Some historians believe Argentine authorities knew exactly who he was and didn't care. But the world was changing. 1959, the German government issued an arrest warrant for Mengele. Suddenly, the hunt intensified. 1960, Israeli Mossad agents captured Adolf Eichmann in Buenos Aires. Mengele panicked. He fled to Paraguay, then to Brazil. Here's the frustrating part. Mossad actually considered capturing Mengele during the Eichmann operation, but they decided Eichmann was higher priority. They planned to come back for Mengele. They never got another chance that good. In Brazil, Mengele lived under the name Wolfgang Gerhardt. He moved frequently, growing increasingly paranoid. His family continued supporting him financially, though they publicly claimed they didn't know his whereabouts. That was a lie. Documents later proved they remained in contact. The 1960s and 70s saw multiple attempts to locate Mengele. Nazi hunters like Simon Wiesenthal dedicated their lives to finding him. Mossad continued surveillance. The U.S. government got involved. There were near misses, tips that came too late, bureaucratic failures that let him slip away. In 1985, Newsweek offered a $1 million reward for information leading to his capture. But by then, it was too late. February 7, 1979, Josef Mengele suffered a stroke while swimming at a beach in Bertioga, Brazil. He drowned. He was 67 years old. His friends, he had made friends in Brazil who didn't know his true identity, buried him under the name Wolfgang Gerhardt. The angel of death died of natural causes, having never faced justice for his crimes. But the story doesn't end there. For years, rumors persisted. Supposed Mengele sightings in Paraguay, claims he was still alive. The survivors needed certainty. They needed to know the monster was truly dead. 1985. Acting on a tip, German police raided the home of Mengele's friend Hans Schiedelmeier in Günzburg. They found letters and addresses, a trail that led to Brazil. June 1985. Brazilian authorities exhumed a grave registered to Wolfgang Gerhardt. Forensic experts examined the remains. Dental records matched. The body showed signs of stroke. But questions remained. 1992. DNA testing, relatively new at the time, was conducted using blood samples from Mengele's son. The results were conclusive. This was Josef Mengele. The angel of death was dead. But for survivors, the confirmation brought no peace. Justice hadn't been served. He died free, comfortable, unpunished. Eva Moses Kaur, the twin survivor, said, "I wanted to see him on trial. I wanted him to face what he did. Death was too easy for him." She was right. Mengele escaped the hangman's noose. He escaped prison. He escaped ever having to look his victims in the eye and answer for his crimes. In the end, evil won, at least on the scoreboard. Josef Mengele conducted his experiments in the name of science. He believed he was advancing human knowledge, contributing to medical progress. He was wrong. His research had no scientific value whatsoever. It was pseudoscientific torture based on racist ideology. Not a single useful medical discovery came from Mengele's experiments. Not one. After the war, the global medical community had to confront an uncomfortable question. What do we do with data obtained through torture? Some argued that if the data existed, it should be used, that at least some good could come from the suffering. But the medical consensus was clear. Absolutely not. Using data from Nazi experiments would legitimize them. It would suggest that torture can produce valuable knowledge. It can't. And even if it could, it would still be absolutely forbidden. Today, Mengele's research notes are regarded as evidence of crimes, not scientific literature. But his legacy shaped modern medical ethics in crucial ways. The Nuremberg Code of 1947 established fundamental principles. Voluntary informed consent is absolutely required. Experiments must benefit society. Unnecessary suffering must be avoided. Subjects can withdraw at any time. These seem obvious now. They weren't always. Mengele's crimes also influenced the Geneva Conventions and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The world looked at what happened in Auschwitz and said, "Never again." Unfortunately, "never again" has been tested. Human experimentation abuses have occurred since Mengele. The Tuskegee syphilis study in the U.S., Soviet psychiatric abuse of dissidents, forced sterilizations in multiple countries, unethical drug trials in developing nations. The fight for ethical medicine is never over. But what about the survivors? The Mengele twins, those who lived, carried physical and psychological scars forever. Many were left sterile from the experiments. Some developed cancer from radiation exposure. Others had chronic pain, organ damage, or blindness. Psychologically, the trauma was even worse. Nightmares, survivor's guilt, PTSD before it had a name. Many twins lost their sibling during the experiments. They survived, but only by losing half of themselves. Eva Moses Kaur became one of the most prominent survivors. She spent her life speaking at schools and museums, ensuring the world wouldn't forget. In 1995, she made a controversial decision. She publicly forgave Dr. Mengele and all Nazis. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because, she said, forgiveness is an act of self-healing. I wanted to be free from the burden of hate. Other survivors were furious. How could she forgive the unforgivable? Eva's response, "I forgive, but I don't forget, and I never stop educating." She founded the Candles Holocaust Museum in Indiana. Candles, standing for Children of Auschwitz Nazi Deadly Lab Experiments Survivors. Until her death in 2019, she told her story thousands of times, to students, to doctors, to anyone who would listen. Her message was always the same. This happened. It was real, and it could happen again if we're not vigilant. The last living Mengele twins are now in their 80s and 90s. Soon there will be none left to tell their stories firsthand. That's why documentation matters, why education matters, why we must keep telling these stories, no matter how uncomfortable they make us.
Josef Mengele was not insane. He was not a cartoon villain. He was an educated man, a doctor, someone who took an oath to do no harm. And he violated that oath in the most horrific ways imaginable.
The question that haunts us: how? How does a medical student become a murderer? How does a doctor become a torturer? The answer is uncomfortable, gradually. It starts with small moral compromises, with viewing some humans as less than others, with prioritizing ideology over empathy. It starts with following orders without questioning, with accepting authority without moral reflection. Mengele didn't wake up one day and decide to torture children. He took thousands of small steps toward evil, each one justified by the previous one. By the time he arrived at Auschwitz, he'd convinced himself he was doing important work, that the ends justified the means, that some lives matter less than others. This is the lesson we must never forget. Evil doesn't require monsters. It just requires ordinary people who stop seeing others as fully human. Mengele escaped justice in this life. He died free, on a beach, at an old age most of his victims never reached. That's a bitter pill to swallow. But here's what he didn't escape. He lost. His ideology lost. His research was worthless. His name became synonymous with evil. The twins he tortured survived to testify, to educate, to ensure the world knows what he did. He wanted to be remembered as a great scientist. Instead, he's remembered as a monster. And the children he experimented on? They're remembered as heroes, survivors, witnesses to history who refused to be silenced. Ava Moses Kaur, Miriam